Everybody just to do their best, Dar, sort of man the back there. And thank you all very much for taking the time to be here. I'll try to be as brief as humanly possible, but I have so much to say that there goes Dufty, that I recognize it may be a challenge. I'd never have sat in the front. See, you guys know this. Maxwell knows this after 7 years, sitting in the back of a mayor's budget speech. But I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come down here. And as you can see, this may not have been the obvious place for a budget presentation, but in every respect, it's a very obvious place from my perspective. I spent a lot of time down here. I spent a lot of time down here because this is my equilibrium. I come down to Market and 6th Street, walk through the Tenderloin and the Civic Center. When I think I'm doing a really good job, I come down here to be reminded that I can do a better job. And when I think things are not going so well and that we haven't made much impact, I come down here as well because I meet people all the time whose lives have changed dramatically because of some of the work we've done down the road at City Hall. And so I'm very blessed that you took the time to be here, and I'm very grateful that so many elected officials are here. And over the course of the presentation, I will appropriately acknowledge all of you for the work that you're doing and the input that you have advanced into this budget and to our efforts. We are also here because we're at a remarkable crossroads in, I think, time in the city's history, particularly in the Central Market area. I remember many, many moons ago meeting Kevin Shelley when he was a supervisor down here, and he was reminding me that the first real job he took in civic life, aside from the association to his father, who served as mayor for many years, was then working for Mayor Dianne Feinstein, who made a pledge some 30-plus years ago to clean up the Central Market area, to clean up the Tenderloin. And I say that because it's a reminder to me that this is hardly a new pledge. This is hardly the first time a mayor says, boy, we're going to make an impact down here. We're going to do better. And I imagine with the mayor's race coming up next year, every single candidate say, I pledge to clean up 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th Street. I have a strategic plan to advance principles and build on success and reconcile failures and the like. And it's been a challenge for a lot of different reasons. But a number of months ago, in fact, in January, we decided, after really analyzing our success and failure, the past work that had been done and some of the shortcomings of those efforts, that we needed to do something dramatically differently. And we established this new Central Market Partnership. And it really builds upon the legacies of previous mayors, previous boards of supervisors, and community leaders that have been out here, candidly for decades, passing batons on to one another to strengthen this community. And that partnership was advanced with a lot of you that are in this room. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to be here, including the owner of this building. And therein lies the long-winded reason we are here. With some renewed vigor, some renewed enthusiasm that maybe just this time, maybe this time things can change with a different multi-agency approach. Not just the redevelopment agency coming down here and capturing tax increment, but building on our capacity within the city family and leveraging resources. Really the spirit of our time, about leveraging resources, not just accepting that we don't have the resources to have a real input, or rather make a big impact into this community. We had a lot of folks across the street when we announced this new partnership, and the framework of that partnership was a framework in recognizing that one of the greatest strengths that defines the best of the city is our artistic expression, that remarkable cultural competency that really is the foundation for what is so good and right about San Francisco, and how that is fully expressed in each of our diverse neighborhoods by the contribution of people that live here, that visit here, that come here, that make their home here and make their way here and make their life in the context of their contribution to the cultural heritage and history of our city and that artistic expression. And that at the centerpiece of any successful economic revitalization, at least in cities large and small across this country, is a vibrant arts scene, is a real commitment to advancing that cultural diversity. And so we have spent a great deal of time really analyzing how we can build on that and analyzing how we can make appropriate investments. And I'll talk about the budget in the context of the arts budget, and I think it will give you a sense of what we're valuing in this budget and how we believe we can inspire a different framework of economic growth and revitalization. This multi-agency effort has been advanced, as I said, not just by city department representatives, but by community leaders. And so many wonderful things have happened that now we're starting to pull them together. One of them is the remarkable effort that's underway through the Better Market Street project, where there's a real commitment to improving the public realm, pedestrian enhancements, a focus on more reliable transit. That's why we did the pilot project here, to remove at least 150 cars. It turns out that was the number of cars every hour or so that had been redirected, particularly going eastbound into the market corridor, to invest in making this more transit friendly. And incidentally, the numbers bear out that we are moving in the right direction. There has been, in the first blush analysis, a 5% improvement in on-time performance of Muni as a consequence of this, to enhance our bicycling efforts here, and a lot of our, I think, interesting and unique projects and pilots, particularly the green streets and the new pylons that are out there and all the other enhancements that are underway. A commitment that's represented in this budget, by the way, to completely repave Market Street. By the way, that's about the size of some state budgets just to repave Market Street. This is not your average repaving project with all of that heavy transit that needs to be included. So we have to, in this context, make an investment so that we're ready to go, and making sure we wisely appropriate our dollars so that in 2013 that project is fully complete. We focused on small businesses and investing in small businesses. We put together a small business revolving loan fund, which incidentally, to the extent people still don't know about it, it's beyond me, provides microloans. We've already had over a dozen companies take advantage of it. We have, I think, 18 in the queue that are about to take advantage of it. But we're going to enhance that revolving loan fund with a new $11 million cultural loan fund that we're going to target in this community, up to $2 million loans that will be made available in literally 2 weeks through the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, that will focus on the Tenderloin and the Central Market area. These are loans that you can get at 3 to 6% interest rates, 20-year amortizations. It will focus on 5th Street to 10th Street, and also focus in the Tenderloin on areas right around Mason and O'Farrell and Larkin. The only criteria, and it seems relatively modest, is that for every $50,000 you take out in a small business loan, we need to mark and measure that you had at least created one job, which seems incredibly modest. So it's not a very high bar in terms of eligibility. You have to make a commitment to the neighborhood, and you simply have to demonstrate that you're going to create an economic benefit to the city and county of San Francisco. As I said, this program will be online in just a couple weeks and build on that other loan program that has successfully been advanced but needs to be market and further proffered. We also are committing, and this is very exciting in this neighborhood, to a series of new arts fairs, a weekly art market in UN Plaza, new arts festival that will be advancing soon, a summer concert series, which I just think is going to be a huge success in the immediate area. We've got festival already planned down at Mint Plaza. We're going to add 30 new beat officers right on 6th Street, right off Market Street. They're actually going to be housed full-time. So that rather than having our police officers come from the district station, they'll be coming right from the community. So they'll talk about the ultimate in community policing. 30 new beat officers. We're ready to roll that out just in the next few months. We've got the new Community Benefit District Safety Ambassadors that we're also going to enhance in this year's budget. And we're going to build on some of the great work that has been done. Randy Shaw is doing great work in the Tenderloin with his, I love it, new Uptown. Should be called Uptown Tenderloin Historic District, and those new plaques that we put in a few months ago, which got the attention of the New York Times, that was bewildered by it, but shouldn't have been once they learned the history of the Tenderloin and that incredible history that can be shared with the rest of the world. It should be a central part of our tourist attraction efforts, as well as the new History Museum that will be built in the Tenderloin. So these are just some of the things that are happening down here that, again, inspired me to come down here. Again, a crossroads of everything that I think is spectacular about the city and everything that remains very challenging and vexing about the city, but conditions that are going to be affected by decisions, meaning we're going to try to change the conditions by making tough choices. We're not going to accept the conditions as our fate and future because we're willing, again, to build on our partnerships, that legacy of commitment and community activism, and try new things and get things done, including, by the way, I hope, seeing the support from the Planning Commission in a few weeks for a 250,000 square foot retail development just down the block between 5th and 6th Street at City Place. And I see a couple of planning commissioners here. I don't want to get in your ear, but I want you to take a good look at that project, and hopefully you will be supportive. Again, all of some of the good things that are taking shape down here, including the commitments for the facade improvement loans that people are taking advantage of, the arts in the storefronts, Louise Cancel, this extraordinary program that I think has made a real impact and, of course, has been replicated in cities across this country, the new community benefit districts that have taken shape, and the new marketplace initiative, all of these programs that are going to, I think, make real enhancements in the neighborhood. Now to the task at hand. Biggest budget deficit in our history. $522.2 million when we started. We made immediate decisions to move in a direction where that was reduced. We held off the temptation to spend more money and to raid our rainy day reserve. And we worked in a deliberative way with those mid-year adjustments to whittle that budget deficit down to $482.7 million. So the frame that I'll offer today is against the backdrop of what I'll round up to be a $483 million shortfall. The worst economic recession since the Great Depression, state cuts, the likes of which we couldn't imagine, let alone have struggled to even relate to, and a federal government that's still working through what it's going to do next, and a lot of uncertainty around some of the federal stimulus monies, and a lot of uncertainty about whether or not those commitments can continue into years to come. So that required a new approach, different kind of relationship in terms of seeking advice and being inspired by people's ingenuity and willingness to participate in finding solutions. That's why I did 2 town hall meetings, very different than a lot of the town hall meetings I've done in the past, where you tend to recognize most people that show up and have a pretty good sense of where they are in terms of the issues. Instead, we decided to go out and randomly sample folks like you would a public opinion poll and get folks to show up to a town hall meeting we had in February. And we did an online interactive town hall where people could vote on their priorities. And we got a lot of outstanding feedback from that town hall. Then we followed up and did the first online budget town hall that we had ever done. We got 24,000 people to participate in that online town hall. Barbara Taylor of KCBS and Rachel Gordon of the San Francisco Chronicle were kind enough to host that town hall. I think it was 2+ hours of interactive, unfiltered dialogue with real folks out there, at least I hope real folks out there online, engaging in a different approach. We held open door days in the Tenderloin and the Mission, centered around the budget. I did another series of town halls, or rather open door days, down at West Portal and out in the Excelsior, also to get feedback from folks. And we put together an employee site, which I'm very proud of, called Improve SF. And we got over 500 specific recommendations from our city employees, folks on the front line that had budget savings ideas. And just briefly, I won't go into all of them, God bless, 500, but there were a couple of wonderful ones. And this is a budget where there are no grand ideas. I mean, there's no idea that just solves the problem. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of small ideas, including an idea that came from Dave Eberly. Dave, where are you? I think you're right here, right in front of me. This poor guy, Dave, has been struggling for years and years to be recognized, and finally found his way through this interactive website, Improve SF, and he alone is responsible almost for his salary, because those wages and benefits don't necessarily add up to the savings, but they're close. When he said, why do we spend all this money on car washing? Something, candidly, I thought about number of cars and insurance, all those things, but we never thought about our car washing contract. And he helped us design a framework where we cut that contract literally in half. And just because of his one idea, we saved $75,000. So, Dave, thank you very much for that example. I love it. I don't know if Johnson Ng is here, but I love this. Johnson, he gets caught on hold, and he goes, well, what's up with all this music, and who pays for the music? Again, something I candidly hadn't thought of. I just thought someone had a radio somewhere, put it on record. Well, it turns out we spend money to be placed on hold, which is not an enjoyable experience by definition. And his idea alone, it's modest, but it's not insignificant, saved $10,800. We had others that, without going in again in great detail, that promoted selling off surplus cars, surplus equipment, all kinds of interesting innovative ideas. By the way, hundreds of recommendations to sell surplus equipment and supplies, not just big property in the city. And then others said it's about time we take some pride in our public transit. As much as we like to beat ourselves up, someone said, I was in New York, and they're selling T-shirts. Their 45 line's their favorite. The 1 Cal, their version of that's their favorite. Or the F line, that's easier to say is your favorite. The cable car, and they wanted to sell some T-shirts and get the city into that business, or sell some other material that would market the pride, which makes San Francisco a special place. We love that idea, and we're processing. And those are just gives you some sense of some of the employee-based reforms. Other reforms that were taking shape this year, the 2-year budget, which we're very, very proud of. And I thank the entire Board of Supervisors, the people of San Francisco, no one more importantly, though, than our controller, Ben Rosenfield, for his vision of creating a framework in a report where he came up with that recommendation. I thank President David Chu for his strong support and advocacy on the Board of Supervisors to process that. And this year we have a budget that begins to implement a 2-year framework. By the way, something that should be done for the state of California. We have included in here 5-year financial plans for the first time as we move to adopt a different framework in terms of some medium-range strategic planning. We put together the framework. Again, thank you to the board, the entire board, for supporting this new stabilization account. Let's not put something on the ballot that takes that away, because it was such a good idea and there's so much to be proud of. Builds on our rainy day reserve, but is more robust and more inclusive to deal with the ebb and flow of the macroeconomic conditions to make sure we bank more dollars away. We finally have that framework in the budget. Now we have to find the resources in the future to fund it, but it's in here. And don't forget, this city had the voters support pay-as-you-go, which means you're going to spend money in the general fund. You've got to find the offsetting cuts, or you have to find the offsetting, or at least find the new revenue to offset where those dollars are coming from. These are important reforms that, again, have already taken shape or are taking shape in our city that I think deserve some attention. The budget had a framework of priorities. We wanted to do our best to protect our core services, our social safety network. We wanted to do our best to do more with less, which means look at waste. Yes, there's always waste. Look at inefficiency. Yes, we could do more on inefficiency. We wanted to focus on the future, not just solving today's problem by investing in economic growth and economic development, invest in our infrastructure, create jobs in the process. And we wanted to make sure that we were going after all the federal funding we possibly could and leverage resources, as well as state resources, and to the extent that we can find them, private sector resources. We, again, began the process early. We didn't wait until the end of the fiscal year. And we managed more effectively in a way that I will explain in a moment has substantially enhanced our ability to balance a budget without draconian cuts. Now, that's a very subjective statement, because if you were cut, it was a draconian cut. And if in a $6+ billion budget there was only $10 cut, you can claim it was draconian, even though most would claim otherwise. But we were able to, I think, avoid the kind of cataclysmic expectation of devastation that some had believed and some had argued was inevitable in this budget, and we'll get to exactly how and why in a moment. $483 billion. How did we get there? First and foremost, we engaged our public employees unions. I've said this publicly, I've said this privately. Boy, I must say this more than I say anything else when I see Bob and Rebecca who are here in the front row, how lucky we are in San Francisco to have enlightened public employee unions. I don't say that to patronize. I'm not saying that because we always agree. And I'm not saying that because they love the opportunity to spend time in the mayor's office working through wage concessions. They've been doing a lot of that in the last 7, 8 years. But at the end of the day, public employees unions stepped up yet again. And if they had not done that, this budget dress would be altogether different. I would have been given it on a Friday before the holiday and hope no one paid any damn attention. Now I can say it on a Tuesday after the holiday's done and hope people take some time to look at this. $61.7 million. That's the general fund commitment that came from our public employees unions. That was their agreement to concessions. And there was no grand side deals. There was nothing that was reported or wasn't reported that will turn out to come back and haunt us in a few years. This was an honest assessment of the challenge and an honest commitment to step up to the plate and try to address it and protect vital services and to do our best to reduce the need to increase the layoffs. We were able to significantly not only get support from labor representatives, but from the rank and file. And I'm proud of this because the concessions are 2-year concessions. I just gave you the general fund concession for this next year. But over 2 years, when you go all funds, all in, public employees unions in this city gave back over $250 million. And I think that deserves a round of applause because they need to be recognized for stepping up to the plate. It's an extraordinary thing. I challenge you, contrast that to any big city in the United States of America. I challenge any of you to do that. Again, it wasn't easy, but it was because of the great leadership of Bob and Rebecca that we are where we are today. So that was candidly the most important thing we could have done and the most important thing we did. I mentioned we made some tough choices in the mid-year that helped annualize a reduction in the overall budget deficit. I talked about managing more aggressively. We found, and this is important, people forget this, we took last year's budget, and some people said, hey, it was great, we got the budget passed, but we managed the budget over the course of the last number of years, or last number of months, 11 months. And over now $64 million, we were able to, quote unquote, carry forward from last year's budget to help us offset this year's budget deficit. That was $34.4 million more that was in, quote unquote, that joint report. For those that are doing the math, $64 million in carryover funds, $34.4 million better than the joint report. How did we do that? Well, we reduced overtime by $17.7 million. We had a strong hiring freeze where we actually had a team, Nikki Callahan, DHR, my budget director, Greg Wagner, and Steve Cava. They actually signed off on every request to backfill a vacant position. Didn't make a lot of folks happy, particularly other electeds in the city. I get it. But we needed to do that so that we can manage the problem, so we can save jobs. We did some math on that. Had we not had a hard hiring freeze, we would have had an additional 193 layoffs in this year's budget. It was critical. It's essential. A budget shouldn't be managed once a year. It needs to be managed every single day. And this year, I think we demonstrated a capacity to do that very effectively. We asked departments to make immediate budget cuts, not just submit budget cuts, but how many of those department head meetings we had, those enjoyable department head meetings, smile, I see a lot of department heads smiling, Mitch Katz in particular with his head down, Trent Rohr, Monique Moyer, Luis Cancel, Luis Herrera. They weren't easy, but we got a lot of the work done. And it was because you made some immediate decisions we were able to, again, to address this shortfall. We leveraged those state and federal dollars. SB 188, I'll talk about that in a moment, $88 million we leveraged from the state. Healthy San Francisco, $26.7 million we are able to leverage for our universal health care plan. Again, that money didn't exist until we had the idea of universal health care. To my point that the money is always out there if you're creative and you're willing to try new things. We had, I think, remarkable reforms at the Recreation and Parks Department. I've got to tell you, one of the guys I'm most proud of in this budget, he's taken some heat unfairly, I think, is my former chief of staff, Phil Ginsburg, who has banked a lot of strong support from labor because he was DHR director for years and worked with labor, worked with SCIU, and came up with a remarkable and creative framework to completely revitalize and reconstitute our recreation system. Rec and Park is always focused a little more on park, not enough on the rec system. And Phil focused dramatically on the recreation side. And as a consequence, it's going to increase the number of programming hours over 20,000 by 20,000 hours, which is amazing in this budget when he's cutting. Still save money. There are creative ways of doing things differently. It's not all perfect, it's not all easy, and folks will pick and choose what they want to focus on, but in the end of the day, real people are going to get more opportunities to get serviced at the Recreation Park system than they did even last year, when we had more money to spend than we did this year. And I don't know, I don't find it that offensive that he's doing bike rentals in some of the parks. I think that's a good thing. I don't find it that offensive that he wants to do an antiques market down at Candlestick. I don't know that offends a lot of folks, Supervisor Maxwell. I think that's a very healthy thing, and we thank you for your support. That's going to generate $100,000+ back into the Recreation and Park system. Japanese Tea Garden, we lost a little of the cultural competency there. It had kind of gotten a little, I'll just say that we improved it. And Eric Marr, I think you understand this. You're shaking your head because you had a lot of hearings on this. And others, you guys got a sense that we can raise more revenue and provide a framework of more cultural competency. We focused as well on contract savings. This was important to labor. $30 million we marked in contract savings. That's just being more thoughtful and more aggressive in terms of our material and supplies, our IT contracts, our cell phone use, et cetera. We've continued to do our best to reduce the fleet in this city. We still have too many cars under management, and we're going to dramatically decrease the number of vehicles in this system. We are going to decrease by $1.6 million, additional decrease the number of cell phones, or rather the costs associated with cell phones in the city. We have a new web-based application. I think these things matter. It's the way you do things in your private life, public life. We should do the same. Software licensing, we have new enterprise agreement with company, I don't want to promote, but big company named Microsoft. We have a whole new reform framework through COIT, which is the Committee on Information Technology, 9 new projects consolidating IT functions. One of the consolidation plans will save $5 million, not this year, but over the next 18 months. So again, making an investment in tomorrow through consolidations of our servers and consolidations of our data storage and the like. Our travel budget was cut for some significantly. Thank you to the ban on travel to Arizona. It was easy. For others, it was harder to convince them that they shouldn't be traveling. Office supplies, new virtual warehouse, $600,000 marked in savings. Reduced our material and supply purchases by $3.1 million, equipment purchases by $4.4 million. We also made some staff reductions, and this wasn't easy. But I'll tell you, it's a lot better than we expected. One of the agreements we made that was public with our Public Employees Union is that we would cap the number of filled positions that would be eliminated. There's a difference between eliminating a position and eliminating a filled position. We cap it at 425. With this budget, we're looking at about 350, and we think we can get that down. So we came in substantially, at least from my perspective, under the cap. We went and we addressed the issue of managers because we agreed. Some of us not so enthusiastic, depending on what public employee union they represent. Others felt we needed to do more with managers, and we have. It's a split decision there. One representing managers, the one that's not necessarily. We made some choices there that are reflective in this budget. 993 positions filled or unfilled. that are reduced in this budget, a number seemingly that always gets sometimes more attention than it deserves, but appropriate attention nonetheless. That puts our total number of full-time equivalent positions at the lowest level they've been since 1998, for what it's worth. We still have a lot of city employees, folks, 25,870. By the way, number changes every day, but it's not even close to its peak. And it gives you a sense that, again, in the last decade, for whatever we've done, we're back to where we were in 1998. Mayor's office led by example. Folks like Steve Gavin, my chief of staff, gave back 10% wage concessions. I did the same on top of not taking that wage increase 2 years ago. We reduced the size of our number of employees by over 15.8%. We have, since I've become mayor, reduced it by over 25%. Overall, the number of positions reduced, overtime, and salary savings provided us a framework of some $64.2 million of additional savings. I'm trying to quickly add up here to that $483 million so you get a sense of how we got there. There are some controversial proposals in here. I know the board's going to take this up, the old Prop J's. None that should surprise you. Many that you've seen, many that I know are difficult to embrace, but are important, I believe, to have a debate about, particularly when you consider if we don't do it, what else we might have to do. But for full disclosure, I want you to know that those that you are familiar with have been placed in this budget. There are no new surprises, something else I committed in those public employee discussions. We looked for creative new revenue. And here's the controversy. Turn on your camera. Not that this will make any sense to you, but to the folks inside this room, I know it will. I just, again, when I'm looking at some of the cuts that were offered me at Department of Public Health and Department of Human Services, even to the Department of Children, Youth, and Family, that I didn't want to make, and I had to go through this for months and months. I've worked on this budget as much or more than anything I have ever done in public life. I've been working on this almost every single day for almost a year now. And I went back and forth because I know the Board of Supervisors can't stand this. But I can't stand the alternative. Now, to the extent they find the alternative in the add-back process, perhaps they will. But this is a debate I want to have because I just think this is principled and right. And that's condo conversion fees. I believe we can generate $8 million of revenue that would go to offset our general fund contribution to affordable housing and not have to make an equivalent cut in discretionary programs that disproportionately impact poor people. And for me, this is de minimis in terms of the overall housing market. I've been doing this 16 years, almost 15. I still don't get this argument completely, except it's big-time ideological discussion. It's so darn ideological, I think it gets in the way of having a real discussion about what this can mean in terms of increasing revenue, not just this year, but in subsequent years, that can be used to help programs for poor people and working families and the working poor. So that's in there. I know that's going to be popular, but I believe it's an important debate. Second one is there's a loophole. I love this. If you go out just briefly and you bulk purchase these online travel companies, it's a good deal they've got. See, they go out and they buy a bunch of hotel rooms for $100. They'll buy 1,000 hotel rooms at $100. Then they market it to you for $150. They pay the hotel tax on $100, and then they pocket the hotel tax on the difference between $100 and $150. That's a pretty good deal. And we think that's wrong. We think it's illegal. But we want to make sure the law is clarified. It's called the online hotel tax loophole. We've marked that at $12 million in terms of annual revenue, $6 million for this budget. I don't believe this should be controversial. This is not a new tax. People are already paying this tax, but we're not collecting it. We think we should collect it, and I want to thank Jose Cisneros for his outstanding work on this. He has been an excellent partner in identifying this, fighting for this, and organizing around this. And Bevan was going to clap. I think you should, Bevan. Thank you. Yeah. He deserves credit. Beyond that, there are no new taxes. In fact, there are no new taxes in this budget. We're able to balance this budget without tax increases. But we're able to draw down $227 million of revenue without tax increases. I know some folks just prefer tax increases. I don't. I think they should be on the table in the absence of an alternative. But I think we've provided ample alternatives here. And I think it's sometimes dangerous to go out and support tax increases that have unintended consequences, that actually can reduce revenue in the medium and long term and not necessarily solve a structural problem that we fundamentally need to resolve. $227 million in new revenue in this budget without general tax increase, by being creative and by focusing on leveraging resources and looking differently at revenue sources like the two I just made. 10-year capital plan is fully funded in this budget. $345 million of capital is invested in this budget. We're investing close to an historic amount in repaving our streets. This is a big deal to everyone I talk to. I don't know a supervisor that, from Supervisor Mercarimi to Supervisor Avalos to Supervisor Chu, who led this task force with us, Supervisor Marr and Supervisor Maxwell, and Supervisor Dufty, that doesn't get complaints about potholes and pavement. $50 million. It's close to an historic amount of money. Thank you, Ed Rieskin, for your hard work. 400 blocks, brand new blocks, will be repaved if we support this budget, and 150 of them will be maintained. We invest in disability access. We invest in new Balboa Park improvements. We invest in the Veterans Building, some seismic safety work that needs to be done there. And we are going to build on 10 key public projects. Treasure Island is very close to moving forward. Central Subway is moving forward. Doyle Drive, with $100 million federal stimulus, is happening. The Water System Improvement Program is happening. Trans-Bay Terminal, that $400 million of stimulus, that's taking shape, and we're about to tear down that old, ugly facility in August and begin the process of replacing it with the world-class Grand Central Station out here on the West Coast. Terminal 2 at the airport will finally be done in this new fiscal year. We've got open space improvements at the Central Waterfront, the Exploratorium happening in the waterfront. Hunters Point, we have an opportunity to step up to the plate and right the wrongs of a generation. This presents itself this month. San Francisco General Hospital, real progress is being made. And if we're lucky and we are supported, we'll have another $412 or so million to improve our fire stations and police stations and the auxiliary water system. And we hope that folks take a good look at that on their June ballot. So those are just 10 highlighted projects that generate thousands and thousands of jobs in this new fiscal year, all projects that we are proud of, all projects that are taking shape, and all projects that will be supported by our capital plan with general fund contribution and non-general fund support. Workforce development is another big part of the enhancements in this budget. Can't have an economic development strategy without a workforce development strategy. We put in 5 new community benefit districts that we want to fund that will bring us from 1 5 years ago to 15 at the end of the fiscal year. We have investments for 3 new neighborhood marketplace initiatives, a big initiative that's going to support our efforts to revitalize the Central Market area. We have a new healthcare academy. Supervisor Maxwell has been working on it, building on the legacy of City Build, and a new, what we call Train Green Academy, keep changing the name, which we're excited about. And the City Build Academy should provide an additional 1,000 folks some comprehensive workforce training. Here's some great news. Summer employment for kids. A lot of folks concerned about it. We are going to increase the number of placements by 50% in this year's budget. This is a big deal, I think. We got creative. From 1,100 slots to now over 1,700 slots. You know, we tripled the number of summer camps. I mean, this is not supposed to happen. Yet we're getting creative. Thank you to Hydra Mendoza and all her support that she's provided, and DCYF and Maria, and to the entire board. You guys have been, on me on this as much or more. It's interesting. Everyone asking, what's going on with the summer programs? And so thank you for keeping all of us honest and keeping us engaged. The Bridges to Success and the Summer Youth Employment Program will be enhanced with MyEap and YouthWorks. And by the way, there's some good news for YouthWorks and MyEap in this budget, and I'll get to that in a moment. Jobs Now, 3,005 human beings have the dignity of work. Thank you to Trent Rohr and his leadership, to, again, Sophie and Eric, the whole team. This is amazing. Here's the good news. We just got last week the appropriation out of the House for a $2.5 billion enhancement. If the Senate agrees, this is a staggering number. If the Senate agrees, we will be able to draw down $154 million into our local economy if the Senate concurs. That's how big a deal this Jobs Now program. Over half of those employed are African Americans. I mean, almost 1,500 people throughout the diverse communities of this city, African Americans, are employed in this program. I'm so proud of that. This is a big, big deal to get extended. And so just thanks to the entire board for their hard work on this. This is one where we're completely unified. Thank you to Speaker Pelosi. And thank you to Trent and his team for highlighting this. This is our #1 legislative priority back east in Washington, and we're going to continue to fight for it. After School for All will be a reality with this year's budget. That's a big deal as well. 5 years ago, we said we could do something no other big city's doing, and that's provide after-school programs for everyone who wants to source them. We'll be 97% there with this budget, something that, again, has not gotten a lot of attention that I think we should be very proud of. How many cities are enhancing their programs 3 to 6, 7 o'clock at night? San Francisco is doing that. Creating a new Office of Child Care and Early Learning. This is about doing more with less. Thank you to the Haas Foundation for their guidance and support. Phase 1 will be the consolidation of DCYF and HSA staff. And then we're going to get to Phase 2, hopefully by the end of the calendar year. But it's an exciting reorganization. I know there's been a lot of consternation at the board. I know Chair Avalos and others have been particularly concerned about this. And I know the president of the board's been in a couple times worried about the DCYF cuts to children, youth, family programs. And I listened. I actually watched a good portion, love Channel 26, watched a good portion of the hearing and got a good sense of the concern and how it was manifested. It wasn't close to the 30% cuts, won't be close to the 20% cuts. Hopefully we'll work together and get these down to very small percentage cuts. But here's the good news. We went through a deliberative process. 200 independent people analyzed through a needs assessment programs. This is a very independent process, and I want to just thank the integrity of that process and the stewardship of that integrity of that process, Maria Sue and her team, and all the community leaders from, well, the school district, the parents, youth voices that participated in that. And we set a tier of priorities, but we couldn't fill everybody with these cuts. But here's the good news, and this proves that if you show up, it's kind of Woody Allen, right? 80% of life is just showing up. That people that went down there, that voices were actually heard. It's not by any stretch all of the cuts, and I get it. But we added back the Youth Speak substantially, added back cuts at Youth Speaks, MyEap, Mission Youth Soccer League. I had about 40 kids. They were so cute, come and visited me for their soccer league, and I just couldn't resist. If you send kids my way, I can't. I'll roll over. And it's a great program, and we didn't want to have to cut it anyway. Tell High substantially is added back. Sunset Youth Services, I see Carmen Chu walked in the back. She was very aggressive about that. Thank you, Supervisor Chu. Huckleberry House, Booker T. John Avalos, you should be happy. The Inner City Youth Center, we substantially put dollars back. Experience Corps, these are just some of the programs. By no means an exclusive list. We found a few extra $1 million that we moved around to offset the cuts. There's still cuts in DCYF. And we're going to be looking forward to working with Supervisor Dufty on one of them in particular. I think we got mission science back in. You're all sick. We called you so you can take credit for it, as he should, because he must have called 30. Well, the problem with Supervisor Dufty is he calls about so many of these programs that it's just so difficult, and he makes such compelling arguments. It's not a cheap date, he says. So thank you, Supervisor. Well done. But there are many others. Arts and culture. There are no cuts to community-based arts programs. Zero. Not a cut. No grant for the arts cuts. We're not going to cut. I'm proud of that. You know, in New York, that gets so much attention for their arts program, the mayor, when he introduced his budget, showed a 31% cut in the financing for arts programs. So one of the first places you cut. And I'm very proud we held the line on the arts cuts. Doesn't mean there weren't a few tweaks here and there, and the board will go through with Harvey Rose some of those tweaks, but substantially we kept these programs completely whole, which I am very, very proud of. There's some changes. Those Prop Js at the Asian Art Museum and others, Fine Arts Museum, they're none, again, not surprising. Libraries, and I'll quickly finish up here. You know, New York's proposing to cut 25% of its budget for libraries, which is amazing. And here we are with the great leadership and stewardship of our Library Commission and the commitment with the baseline funding that went down, remember, but we're still able to do this, the following. You know, we're halfway there, completely revitalizing, as we like to say, our 21st century library system. We're halfway there. This year's budget will have 8 brand new branch libraries completed. 2 are brand new libraries. 6 are libraries that are being reinvented. Parkside and Anza, Merced, Golden Gate Valley, Presidio, and Park, completely renovated. Ortega and Visitation Valley will be completely, well, they'll be brand new libraries, all in this budget. I want to thank Luis Cancel or Luis Herrera for engaging the Department of Children, Youth, and Family on the family passes. This is, again, ways of doing more with less. The work he did with Phil Ginsberg, his colleague, at doing early childhood literacy programs, senior programs in our library system, the summer reading enhancements in partnership with the libraries, as well as DPH. You know, Mitch Katz and Trent Rohr at HSA and the director of libraries have an issue with the challenges of poverty in our libraries. And they've had this great partnership, which are going to be enhanced in this budget, to reach out with Trent Rohr and, with Dariush Kayan and others. We connected already 270 people to programs and services in the last year. We want to keep that program going and address some of those issues in this budget. Public safety. Yeah, I'm watching some commercials and I'm thinking, I'm going to steal a line from last year, that I'm living in a parallel universe. We did a little, I don't know, objective fact-finding, not subjective politicking. The district attorney, whose core services are maintained in this budget, had the highest rate of felony convictions, 5,700 felony cases, the highest rate of convictions since 1995. And she deserves a round of applause for that record. This is important. And I don't want to see that rolled back. She should continue to have the resources to do that good work. You know, something else, you see these ads, you get confused, again, because facts aren't in evidence. People have a right to their opinion, not their own set of facts. Well, here's another fact that's missing. An 80% increase since 2003, since when she started, of the number of people sentenced to state prison because of the work that she's doing. So the DA's office is substantially protected in this budget because I don't want to roll back the success of her work and these programs she's committed to. Doing the same thing with the sheriff. And Michael Hennessy's been here a long time, and I say that lovingly and not an ageist statement. But he's put his time into this city, and he appreciates that, I think. And I'm starting to appreciate it because I'm getting great hair. Wow. And it was a treat working with him as well because he's willing to be creative, which is why I say he's been around a long time, but he's willing to be creative, open to new ideas. And he's been hard-headed in terms of the management. Overtime is substantially down with the sheriff's office, and that will be reflected in this year's budget. The jail population is stabilizing so that we can redirect some of the existing population, or rather the resources of the Sheriff's Department, to other jails. He's willing to try different things in terms of his commitment to security at San Francisco General Hospital, Laguna, and some of the clinics, and for food service. And he should not be criticized for being open-minded to this, including jail health. And I know, again, how controversial this will be to members of the board. I respect that. Don't blame Sheriff Hennessy for this. But I respect his willingness to be supportive under the circumstances. And just the jail health service program will save $11 million on an annualized basis, $5+ million if we approve it this year. Think about where that money can go into other programs, into investing in people. So I appreciate his commitment through this process. The police department, there are no layoffs of police officers in this budget. No layoffs of firefighters in this budget. I want to thank the POA like I thanked our PEC. And if anyone understood what that means outside this room, I understand why it's confusing. Public Employees Committee, police officer, whatever. I've been doing this too long as well. But I want to thank the union representing our police officers for saving jobs for the men and women in uniform. They stepped up, and as a consequence of their wage concessions, $9.3 million this year, there'll be no police officers laid off. We're going to finally invest in, well, not to the degree we need to, but I think nonetheless significantly in enhancing information technology over at the police department. All of us know how much we need to do over there. ComStat will get an additional $1 million, some automatic biometric ID system will get another $1.5 million, $3.3 million in IT enhancements in the police department's budget, which I think are important. We will defer an academy class, but because there's no layoffs, we'll meet the criteria of the federal stimulus grant that we received, and that graduating class will actually be out on the streets over the course of the next fiscal year. So again, how many cities can lay claim to no police officers being laid off and significant wage concessions from their bargaining unit? I'm very, very proud of that. The public defender, and I want to talk about the DA and the public defender in a moment as I talk about the crime lab. And so I'll defer a little bit more, but by and large, in fact, not by and large, the budget's maintained for the public defender as a baseline for last year. I know there's some concern about caseloads and needs for enhancements, and we can have that debate over the next few months, but there are no significant cuts, as there were none for the public, for the DA. There are none for the public defender. Juvenile probation, adult probation, we all know we have a significant challenge with adult probation and their caseloads. We're leveraging more federal dollars. I want to thank our new director for her outstanding leadership and stewardship. She was in my office multiple times, well, once physically, and then in spirit many, many other times, and then in the department head meetings. So we're holding the line there. Same with juvenile probation. Also going to make enhancements and investments in log cabin ranch. We need to do more there. I know that all of us agree. It's just been difficult the last few years. It's not a huge regret under the circumstances, but we want to at least get this thing rolling. And I want to thank Chief Zipperman for his support in keeping that process moving forward. Department of Emergency Services, we hold the line, save some money on salary savings, some debt reduction, debt service. Fire Department, we maintain the mandated Prop F staffing. So again, no firefighters are being laid off. We're not shutting down fire stations. Again, in New York City, 400. The mayor called for 400 firefighters to be laid off. None will be laid off if this budget is supported. Wage concessions from firefighters, $7.9 million. Firefighters stepped up to the plate. Again, like our police officers, they deserve credit. They also found new ways to generate revenue, and I don't see Chief Hayes White in the front. Maybe she's in the back. I want to thank her. One of the new revenue sources is some recoveries for taking over the Presidio firefighting apparatus. That's about a $1.6 million enhancement to the general fund. The Presidio Trust shouldn't panic that they're overpaying. It just works out because of the way we are staffing. That will generate another $1.6 million in new recovery revenue for doing that. Now to the crime lab, and we'll get to DPH and DHS, and I'll get you out of here. We know we need to make some improvements in the crime lab. That's self-evident. There's not a human being in this room or outside this room that doesn't recognize that. This year's budget includes $5.9 million of enhancements to the baseline funding at the crime lab. Working in concert with the district attorney, working closely with Chief Gascon, working closely with the public defender and others, we have prioritized the following: 8 additional new staff for the public defender and the DA to make sure that they're doing everything they can and have the resources to update and reorganize and reimagine that crime lab. $2.6 million to eliminate the backlog for controlled substances, focusing on the backlog and outsourcing, again, controversial, but the firearms backlog, I want to get this done. I include a Prop J in this budget. This needs to get done. DA understands this. She's fighting for this. Top priority. It's in the budget. We do the same thing. Well, we have a different strategy for clearing the backlog for the DNA, but nonetheless, we make enhancements and we fund the DNA backlogs. We put $2.1 million in enhancements for equipment and capital over at the crime lab, things large and small, from a backup generator to HVAC systems. That's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, which you need a little of here, etc. So there are substantial enhancements there. Resources will not be our excuse for not modernizing the crime lab. That's well underway. And I want to thank everybody for working collaboratively together, some of us more than others, to depoliticize this, to turn down the rhetoric, and to make this a world-class crime lab that will be a model to others. Because I am convinced at the end of the day, that's what will be the outcome of this very difficult process. And that's because we will work together and we'll have the resources to make these commitments to right the wrongs and to make this crime lab the priority that all of us in this room recognize it should be. Department of Public Health. This was the big fear coming into this budget. $1.44 billion budget. At the end of the day, the general fund is reduced to this department by $22.1 million. That sounds like a lot. Let's put that in perspective. It's a 1.5% reduction in the budget. 1.5% reduction in the budget. The operating budget of the Department of Public Health actually goes up. Capital budget goes down, a lot of it one-time capital. It's because Mitch Katz and his team and Greg Wagner and Kate Howard and all the good folks in my budget office got aggressive on revenues. I mentioned SB 188, that $88 million, that's new revenue. Without that, that would be cuts. $26.7 million to fully fund Healthy San Francisco. I mean, what city is fully funding universal health care? San Francisco is fully funding universal health care in this budget because we went out and found another $26.7 million. We got some FMAT enhancements. Folks in this room know a lot about that. Don't worry about it. $14 million, substantially more than we had imagined. $12 million in mental health funds that we'll be able to draw down from the state. A significant portion of the target for DPH, Department of Public Health, was done through new revenue, not cuts. So here are the cuts, because here are the ones that are going to get the headlines and make some noise. I told you about some of the Prop Js. Again, I'll take a Prop J any day of the week to a mental health cut or a substance abuse cut. But that doesn't deny the fact that even with that, we have to make some tough choices. And in that budget, there are some tough choices. Our priority is residential drug treatment. And not only is it prioritized, it's substantially invested in. If you work at Progress Foundation and Baker Places and Walden House, you'll be pleased that the cuts that you heard about and were concerned about at Progress, they're $2.25 million less. In fact, we added that back. There are no cuts to your residential program. There are no cuts at Baker Places. We added that $1.5 million back. At Walden House, $750,000. So we're walking our talk on investing in residential drug treatment. I believe in the efficacy of residential. I believe there's a lot of question marks around outpatient drug treatment. It's just a personal opinion based on a lot of research and based upon a lot of analysis. So the cuts we will propose, and the board will engage in a spirited discussion with me, as we have the last few years, and I hope we can make a few at least, because even if we had all the money in the world, we shouldn't be wasting money on programs that aren't working, because there are some programs that don't work, and I don't know why we're spending money on some of these. I mean, if we can't make the tough choices now, we'll never make it when the economy comes back. So the cuts that I want to challenge you with and work with you to restore, because some I don't support any more than you do, but I had to figure out a way to balance this budget to get it to your hands, are some of the outpatient drug treatment programs. And those are not insignificant. They're less than last year, which is remarkable when you consider the budget this year. But we looked very strategically at offsetting those with a huge enhancement of new supportive housing, which will have the on-site case management and a version of outpatient drug treatment. So there's a real narrative here. And I hope you spend time with Barbara Garcia, members of the board, and and Mitch and Trent. See the connection here? Mitch made some, we had some tough love moments in the budget where he challenged me, because it's so much easier not to make these cuts, because you can say I never made them, as opposed to making them so we can have a robust debate. And I hope, again, we have an honest debate about some of these programs. But let's put it in perspective. Mental health and substance abuse budget this year's $242 million. We proposed to cut less than 2%. And I know you're going to hear dramatic, devastating cuts. 2%. And the board will have a chance to look at some enhancements. We're almost there, guys. We've got some interesting consolidations on the behavioral health and acute mental health services side, primary care. We're going to continue those. That will save $1.7 million in administrative savings. We've got, yes, I put it back in. I know Chair Avalos will love this. I hope he has a smile on his face as opposed to frown, but I can't in good conscience justify the $455,000, the SRO collaborative, but we didn't touch the DBI version, and I look forward to working with you on this and the Finance Committee. Again, just looking at some other cuts at DPH, I couldn't do it. HIV and AIDS, we think we're in a margin where we could substantially restore. There's some questions about equalizing housing subsidies that I think are worth a good debate, that we can manage through attrition. There are some other prevention dollars that I think are worth having a debate about, but this is less than $1 million, so it'll be in a margin where I think we can work together. We have some big contract savings, $7.7 million, because of a new contract, IT contract, that will generate $1.1 million over 7 years of savings. And incidentally, we restored a couple of the outpatient drug treatment programs that you did hear about. That's the the school-based services for children. We enhanced that back $1 million, added that back. And the Central City, $200,000. It's not in the budget. I heard from a lot of you, and I appreciate that feedback and that support. Project Homeless Connect, the permanent space, I just believe in this. That's in the budget, and I hope we can enhance it and advance it. And that will give me the segue to close, because this ties into homelessness and Department of Human Services. Their budget, $662.6 million. General fund reduction, 10.6. Again, 1.5%. Not 10%, not 30%, not even that 20%, 1.5%. Again, substantial new revenue. FMAT dollars, IHSS, and by the way, we do not cut in-home support services. We do not increase the copay. There's not a city in the state or county in California that can claim that. And I hope we get a thank you card from some of my friends at IHSS, because I don't always get thank yous from them. Not that I am looking for thank yous, but I just hope they see this, because this costs money, and it comes out of some of these other things that they're going to all criticize me about, understandably, when we're back at the budget. But we prioritized IHSS in this budget. No domestic violence cuts, none. Which is important, and no cuts to women's programs of any merit, none. We do have some controversial cuts in nutrition program. Now, and good people can disagree about this. We got it into a margin where I look forward to working with the board, where, you know, some people say this will be devastating. Others say, well, we can do more with less. Good people can disagree, but I think that will be controversial. And some of the, we froze some of the enrollment and some of the rental subsidies. Another area where, again, in the board and the add-back process, this is top of my list, so encourage, to the extent it's a priority for you, us to consider making some adjustments on that. It wasn't an easy cut for me either. Here's a number, and this goes truly to my close and thank yous, that I'm really proud of. 4,027. This is really amazing. because you all know, I mean, at least most of you, I hope, believe this and know this, that my priority has always been homelessness. It's my passion. It's why I do these walks down here. That's what I care about most. And while we reduce the street population 39%, I see what you see every single day, and that's folks desperately in need. But this is a number that I'm proud of. We are increasing supportive housing in this budget this year by hundreds of units. Now we have in our portfolio, I don't care if you just per capita, you just consider population alone, if you don't adjust per capita, but just consider population alone, 4,027 supportive housing units will be in our portfolio. Thousands and thousands of human beings' lives have dramatically changed, and this budget enhances the supportive housing commitment in this city. And Steve should applaud. I'm proud of that, and I just wanted to end with that because I'm proud of it. So that's where we are. In many ways, in a lot better shape than a lot of us had predicted, and some of us had assumed. Lots of hard work, a budget that wasn't balanced in the last few weeks, but has been balanced over the course of the last 11 months. Extraordinary leadership from our department heads. And if everyone could give a round of applause to every department head in this city, thank you for your leadership and your advancement. Truly, it's amazing. Thank you. No one has worked harder than Greg Wagner, the budget director. Thank you, Greg. We'll see if you continue to say that after you see the details. Kate Howard, our deputy budget director. Kate, thank you in the back for all your work. I'll just go quickly. Leo, Manish, and Rebecca, and Jonathan, D, Megan, Renee, and Rick, thank you all again on the budget team. You guys know who you are. Thank you for your support. You guys have been great. To Ben Rosenfield and the controllers team, Monique Zamuda, thank you guys for all your hard work, wherever you are. Well done. And to Steve Cava, who just loved spending all that time with you, Bob and Rebecca. No one could do it better. One of a kind. Steve Cava, my chief of staff, for all his hard work and his patience. And to, who do I forget? And to Mickey Callahan and her entire team, Department of Human Resources. Thank you, Mickey, for all your hard work and commitment. To the great work of our assessor recorder helping us find new revenue this year. We appreciate your hard work, Phil. Thank you very much. You did an outstanding, you actually did what you said you were going to do last year in the budget, which is a big deal. I mentioned Jose. Thank you. So it made a big deal. Phil, too. I talked about the great work of my favorite treasurer anywhere, and Bank on San Francisco, that's now Bank on USA, the local income tax credit, Payday Plus, in this kindergarten to college. And thank you to Supervisor Campos and Abstentia for his support of that, and everybody else, this landmark program that we think will be modeled across this country. Thank you for your leadership. Supervisor Dufty, as I said, so many. You should sunshine all the letters that I get from Supervisor Dufty, the members of the press, as diligent as anyone in terms of these enhancements. To my partner, not just out in the southeast sector, but boy, the work we've done in the last number of years. Supervisor Maxwell, you just deserve a lot of credit. Great things are happening out there. Great things are happening out there. To our green supervisor and the solar incentives and all the workforce training and what's happening at Sunset Solar, the green financing, Supervisor Marr, thank you for all your hard work and your insight in this. Really mean it. I really appreciate it. Supervisor Chu and our wonderful weekly meetings, which are always challenging and enlivening. Thank you for your hard work and your stewardship and helping coordinate your folks, as you say, and everybody that's coming in your office asking every single day for help. I know how difficult it is to be president of a board, though I never was. I can only imagine. So thank you for all your hard work and advance as well. To Supervisor Mercarimi, I don't think we've ever got more compliments on streets than every time someone goes down to Visadero and all these new programs. But it just shows what can happen when everyone works together, and a lot of new creative ideas, and look forward to working with you. Feel free anytime to come down in the budget to engage. I'll tell you, those that do, it works out a lot better than those that don't. And so I encourage you on the budget team to do that, and thank you for your stewardship and for your advocacy as well behind the scenes in helping us get here. To Carmen Chu, thank you. A lot of those enhancements, particularly at DCYF, were because of your stewardship and a lot of the hard work and your commitment, and I hope it's reflected in a lot that I said today, and I appreciate all that you have done in your very short time. And I don't know if it's worse being a supervisor or being a former budget team member, but thank you as well, Supervisor Carmen Chu, for all your work. And finally, to the chair of the budget committee, David, I said this, I thought it was a great decision you made to reappoint John Avalos as budget chair. It's such a tough time, and to have what he was able to accomplish last year and to know that he'll be here this year, I know how difficult it is, and I know again, I spent 7 years on the board. I know the calls you get. I know the pressure you get. I know how difficult this will be. And so I, in particular, want to thank you in advance for being willing to commit yet again to this process, and know that you have an open door, and know that I am fully committed to working with you to do what we can through this process of give and take over the next 60 days, because I know there's a lot that will be asked of you, and I know that this will be a resource-constrained environment. But if we could do it last year, I have every confidence and expectation that we can do it again together this year. Thank you as well, John Avalos. So that's enough of me, to the sheriff, to the public defender, to the DA, to all the rest of you for your patience, and once again sitting through a long-winded budget presentation. I get excited about these things. I hope you can sense a little of that, and I'm very proud that we got through this rocky road. Contrast this, final words, to the state of California. Contrast this to big cities all across the state of California. Contrast this budget to these other cities. I am proud of San Francisco. I'm proud of San Franciscans. I'm proud to be mayor of the city, and I'm proud and honored to be able to work with all of you over the next 60 days to put together a budget that, under the circumstances, we can be proud of. Thank you all very much for being here.
SFG TV, San Francisco Government Television.